All right, hi. This tutorial is going to be all about diminished seventh chords, which, as you'll discover, they're a bit of a weird one. People get a bit frightened of diminished sevenths because they don't really understand them. But they are a really fun chord to play. They're often in very sort of jazzy sounding turnarounds. Two different diminished seventh chords I just played there, and they sort of have a tension built into them. They're very good, sort of like the old-fashioned kind of melodrama. Sort of cartoon comedy shapes. Now, I recommend, to understand them properly, now I've already done a video. I did a tutorial video with diagrams, and I'll put a link to it. It shows you the clock diagram, how you draw lots of chords. You can fast forward it to I think it's the 8-minute mark, about 8-minute 15-second mark. And there's a section that only goes for 2.5 minutes, and that explains how diminished seventh chords are made. They're comprised of the root note, the flattened third, the flattened fifth, and the double flattened seventh, which is a weird combination. But effectively, those four notes are all equidistant to each other. They form a square in the diagram. But it means that they repeat. Once you know one chord, it repeats only 3 frets later, because it's just the root note changes, and it also explains why every chord has 4 different names. They're essentially the same. So I know already that sounds a bit confusing, but it's going to be a bit less confusing when we just have a look at it. Now, the way to find diminished sevenths, it's going to be really handy to learn or to know a lot of the names of the notes in this sort of section of the fretboard. Now, we already know the names of the strings, open strings, so that's a good start. G, C, E, and A. So let's use that as a basis. The first diminished seventh chord we're going to play will have a G, so that's an open string. It'll have a C sharp, so let's play it here. It'll have an E, so that's the next open string, and it'll have a B flat, so that's the first fret on the A string. I'm leaving this finger off so we can use it as a bar later on, so that's the shape. 0, 1, 0, 1. So it's quite a simple chord to play. So that's the very first chord. And this, it can be named after any of those notes. It could be a G diminished seventh. It could be a C sharp diminished seventh. It could be an E diminished seventh, or it could be a B flat diminished seventh. So the 4 notes that I'm playing are also the 4 names of the chord. So if we want to move up, let's move it all up a semitone to play a different chord. So these 2 fingers will slide up, and I'm going to need to bar behind them so that all the open strings also go up a semitone. And we get the shape 1, 2, 1, 2, which has a G sharp, that'll be a D, that'll be an F, and that's a B. So we've got, that's one shape, and we can play all 4 of those chords. It's a G sharp, a D, an F, or a B diminished seventh. They all have the same shape. And then the next position I'll show you will just be to slide it all up one. Now that we've formed a bar chord, this is going to be really easy to slide up to the next position, and we'll have, that note's going to be an A note. That one will be an E flat. That'll be a G flat or an F sharp. And there's your C at the top. And those 4 notes are the names of this chord. That's an A diminished seventh, an E flat diminished seventh, a G flat diminished seventh, or a C diminished seventh. And then if we go up one more to the barring the 3rd fret, what are these notes? We have a B flat, an E, a G, and a C sharp. But if you have a look where I've written these notes, this is exactly the same as what we started with. They're just in a different order. B flat, E, G, and C sharp. But that's what we started with down here. G, C sharp, E, and B flat. So it's only taken 3 frets and we've already repeated the pattern. So really we could just hold these 3 bar shapes. Forget the open one. We've got 1, 2, 3 shapes, all exactly the same, just depending on what fret you start with, the 1st fret, 2nd or 3rd fret. If I went up one more, on the 4th fret, that's going to be that's a B note, an F note, a G sharp, and a D. And that's exactly the same notes, just in a different combination to what it was down here. So every 3 frets, we've got exactly the same chord. So you don't have to go too high up the neck, you've already just covered them. So that's really handy. It's a simple shape, really. It's a little bit cramped, but once you get the shape, it's really easy, and you only ever have to play these first 3 frets, really. And sometimes it's easier just to play the open fret there with 2 fingers. So you'll notice that on any 3 consecutive chords, like the ones I've highlighted here in yellow, that's the 1st fret, the 2nd fret, and the 3rd fret, you've got all 12 of the possible notes are contained there. Now, how do we know what the chord is? If we see a chord in the music, how are we going to find it? Because that is what normally confuses people. It's easy enough to find these, to play the chords, but because they're all so repetitive and so similar, and they've all got 4 different names, so the trick is we have to know what the note is that we're looking for. So let's say the music says you want to play a C diminished 7th. Well, we know where our C note is. There's a C note that we always play. And there's another C note there as the open string. So, but let's look at the 3rd fret one. If I'm going to play that as my C, then I just have to think, how do I form the shape around it? I'm going to bar there, put my other finger underneath it. So I've got a C note, and that means that has to be a C diminished 7th. So let's say it said F diminished 7th. So find an F, there's my F note, 1 fret after the E string. We always play it when we play an F chord. So that's the. So if I was going to play that, I would have to. It's not. My fingers are going to go on the other 2 strings around it. So that's going to be the barred finger, and we'll find that's an F diminished 7th. Sometimes I do go up the neck a bit. If I want to find a D diminished 7th, say, sometimes it's much easier. I already know from playing my C-shaped bar chords, I'm so used to thinking that my 5th fret note here is a D. So if it said D diminished 7th, I'd go straight to that note, D, and I'd form my shape around there, D diminished 7th, because it's got the D note in it. So you just have to find one note. Doesn't matter what string you find the note. If you know it's a G, there's an open string G, so there would be an open chord there because it's got the open string. So it doesn't matter where you find the note, you just have to find a single note and hold it, and then figure out how am I going to form the diminished 7th shape around that, holding that note. So sometimes it takes a little bit of nutting out, and it really helps when you can figure out where what your names of all these notes with your sharps and flats. But it'll be absolutely every chord is either that one, or that one. And after that, you're just sort of inverting them, so a different note will be the highest note. So I hope that's helped to explain it a bit and made it a bit easier. So next time that you're looking in the music, you'll be able to at least have a go at finding the note you need and playing the diminished seventh chord. Cheers.